Oh my goodness, Amanda. You are on some adventures, aren't you?
I am. I love it when I get to be on an extended adventure. So yes, you're catching me on day one. I have just landed in Thessaloniki, Greece, and kind of shifting gears between one thing and another.
Yeah, so I want to hear more about your adventures that you've been recently on, but let's just introduce you to the beautiful global retreat in our podcast. So, Amanda, where are you right now? You just said, but where are you like where do you usually hang out, I guess you would say, or if you want to call it home, and what are you offering the world these days?
Yeah, my home and home studio is in Atlanta, Georgia. I've lived in Georgia all of my life, so I appreciate getting to travel and I appreciate getting to go home. Um, in person, I have a private studio. I'm a yoga therapist. So I work with private clients and do occasional Zoom and in-person things, but I have just really in the past couple of years decided to merge a couple of my passions, which is teaching yoga or yogic lifestyle and travel. So
Mm.
I'm working on another retreat coming up in just a few days, and then a couple of retreats coming up in 2025, and some things that I haven't quite gotten ready to announce yet.
Okay, well, we'll dig into I want to hear more about the retreats in a moment, but I'm curious to know. So you claim you call yourself a yoga therapist. So just so other people realize that there's a difference between just teaching yoga, not just teaching, but there is a whole other level of the yoga therapy. And I would love to hear just more about what that is and what pulled you to in that direction.
Yeah. Um, So if a person chooses to take a yoga teacher training, that will typically be 200 hours of training that's certified by the Yoga Alliance, and that allows them to have the insurance that they need to teach in studios and have a very solid background to teach yoga classes. And then many people want to go on, so you can add an additional 300 hours and eventually become an experienced ERYT 500 with Yoga Alliance. Um, and so that's a great path. And then for people who are drawn into the more therapeutic side, as I was for reasons I can go into, it's another 300 to 500 hours of training. So I did this somewhat early on. I was grandfathered in at 800 hours. And at the time, I had come to yoga personally because I had just had some very real nervous system problems, unable to sleep, and very sympathetically active. And eventually, I lost cognition and was hospitalized. And so when I came out, part of the problem was just an extreme headache. And when I came out, I still identified as being, like fit and active. So I wanted a no impact workout. And there was a hot yoga studio across the street from me. So it was initially like a physical workout that brought me to yoga. And then over time, of course, I learned the benefits of pranayama. I really came to appreciate the philosophy, which was sort of a reframing of things I had already known and a way that I wanted to live.
Mhm.
And so I was pursuing yoga therapy, and just as a way to say, like, we don't necessarily have to be able to stand on our pinky finger to create a sense of well being, a sense of wholeness in our life. And how can we use these ancient practices for our modern lifestyle to live better and to treat other people better and maybe to make the world better? So that might have been a long answer.
No, that was a perfect answer. You and I are similar because I've been teaching yoga as well for almost more than 20 years now, but similar door and similar but different. I came through the physical practice because I was a dancer and needed to use that as my physical training. But then, like you, found all of these other benefits. But I'd love to hear just what was that? What was old Amanda like before that in terms of getting to that point where you had to be hospitalized? So anybody out there can probably relate
Mm.
to a certain extent. What did that look like? What was your lifestyle like? What were some symptoms
Yeah.
as you spoke of?
Well, I guess a word I can use is conditioning. I feel like all of
Mhm.
us are conditioned from the time that we are very young to be what mom or dad or our teacher, preacher, mentor, caregiver, we're conditioned by the world to, believe what we're taught. And I think that I had a disconnect between my head, all of the things that I thought I was supposed to be and do, and my heart. And yeah, I just had these stories in my head that, I couldn't live up to, whether it was maybe we all deal with some perfectionism. Um, but really for me, just my energy. Like I've come through yoga and even some esoteric studies like astrology and human design. I've come to know myself and what my energy level is and what I feel like I'm here to do and what I feel like I'm not here to do.
Mhm.
But that figuring that out didn't happen overnight. And
Mhm.
so I really had to little by little let go of these ideas of what I thought I needed to be or do. And a real breakthrough for me, honestly. I had before I got sick, I mentioned I couldn't sleep, so I was on sleep meds. I'm diagnosed with adult ADD, so ADD meds. I was in terrible pain because I had a headache, so muscles relaxers, and I had a little cocktail going on just to try to get through every day.
How old are you,
And
Amanda?
at the time, I was 40. Now I'm
Okay.
54.
Yeah.
Um, so in my training, I was in an advanced pranayama
Mhm.
class, and we got into some really advanced breathwork techniques. And I had an experiential understanding of how managing the breath will manage the nervous system, direct path. And it just changed everything for me. And so I wouldn't recommend this to others, but I took myself off of my meds and put myself um, on a basically a pranayama program. And it really made a huge difference. It's just, the solution was literally right under my nose. Not the entire solution, right? But a really good tool. And it's a tool that everyone has access to and it's free.
It is. Yeah. That knowledge is like so empowering once you have it. Like, how can we breathe? There's so many people we walk around, and yes, we're breathing every day, but we're not utilizing it to the best of our ability, right? And I love that you made this experience, like this moment that you had in that experience of your training of aha, and you were able to take the power back for yourself and your breath back, literally. That's so beautiful. And now it sounds like you shifted into that's what took you deeper into the yoga therapy, it sounds like, or you were already in the middle of it. Yeah.
Hmm. I probably would have, I don't know what my path would have been, but I got asked to sub some private clients at a studio where I was working. And one of the women that I started working with had spinal cord injury.
Mm.
So she was paraplegic. And I just, like had every contraindication that I'd ever learned, like everything we shouldn't do. And I was very new and very fearful. And she happened to be a lawyer. So she was great at saying, okay, you've informed me. Now let's invert. And so I loved working. Yeah, she taught me as much as I taught her. I loved working with her, and it was a doorway into the spinal cord community. And again, it just reinforced that sense of, alignment is great. I'm not discounting alignment, but there's an inner alignment that is so very important. And whatever age or stage we're in, I really think that these ancient practices can help us to feel more whole, more complete. Um, yeah. So my path wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but I really enjoyed it. And now I would say I'm more of a generalist.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and I fully believe it as well. Our students are our teachers in so many ways. And that sounds like she was put on your path to steer you in this new direction and open your eyes to another way of teaching and a new population, like you said. Can you speak, because I resonate with it, but I want to hear you, especially people who want to like dig in deeper. What is that inner alignment? What does that mean to you? What does
Mm.
that look like?
Well, like textbook, the way I learned it and the way I experienced it, there's a term in yoga called the koshas,
Mm-hmm.
which translates roughly to a sheath, kind of like Russian nesting dolls or envelopes inside envelopes. And it basically goes from gross to subtle. So our physical body is called the Annamaya kosha, which literally translates to like the food body, an illusion made out of food. And then we go a step deeper and we get into the pranamaya kosha, the energy body. And a step deeper, manomaya kosha, we get into the mind and how we think, and how, of course, we know that our thoughts affect our physiology. And then going deeper still, we get into our personal intuition. And in yogic studies, it's believed that the essence of ourselves, which we may be completely, not in touch with in our conscious, in our waking hours, is the Anandamaya kosha. And that was taught to me incidentally as the bliss body,
Mm-hmm.
bliss. And then, funny quick story, I went to, so my like spiritual name is Ananda. Amanda is my given name, and Ananda is what I was gifted by my teachers. And I visited Nepal. And when I did, it was just easier to introduce myself as Ananda because that was a familiar name.
Mm-hmm.
And every person would say, relax, relax. And Ananda meant to
Yes.
relax. And it was like, I had to hear it multiple times. It was almost like the universe sent me the message, right? Like a, light bulb that kept having to light up. And finally I realized, oh, I think there's that Chinese expression about stress is who we think we are and relaxation is who we actually are. And
Mm-hmm.
I've really embraced that, um, as just like it's brought me a lot deeper into yoga nidra and to practices of stillness. Um, and like yen had been sort of my specialty for a long time anyway, but yoga nidra has really, um, it just continues to amaze me with the deep physical and psychological reset that it can create. So I'm leaning in to answer your question, to the more subtle body practices, and they're not necessarily familiar to everyone. I feel like a lot of people like me, like you, come to yoga as a physical practice. And for some, that's perfect. That's what they need. And others may be open to some of the more esoteric studies.
Yeah. I experienced this, and you probably resonate too for yourself and for your students, that we came in through one door, but then we realized there's so many other doors that we can
Yeah.
go down, and you actually can't help but open all of them. Right? When you're actually sitting there and in the practice, like you can't help but experience the power of the breath and experience, your essence, right? When we're in those meditations for long periods of time. And yeah, so yeah, I love it. So you started, so this kind of steered you into this direction with working one-on-one. And then I know that you transitioned, it sounded like at that time you were working in a studio, but you transitioned into your own private studio. And what did that journey look like?
Um, I taught in studios for a decade and really enjoyed it. But when COVID hit, like many people, my studios took a little break. And the one where I really felt like I had a Sangha, a community, a tribe, closed.
Mm.
Um, and I think while I was in that little break, while the world was in that place, I realized how like soul level tired I was. Um, and I kind of realized that I had done a different version of my old self, right? Like I had made teaching yoga, this thing that I thought I had to do so many classes, or I don't know. But I was tired, like deep down tired. And so I just chose to stop for a little while and, like focus in on the private studio that I already had. And what it allowed me to do is to really realize, I'm an empty nester. And so I went through a little phase of figuring that out. And what I figured out is I've waited my whole life to travel. That's what I love. That's what lights me up. And to me, I think we've kind of alluded to this, but yoga on the mat is great. At first, we do yoga, and then ideally, we become yoga and we kind of take that out and live it in the world. And I have so many stories of how travel just like test you, like you learn, um, ahimsa, conscious travel, like where's our money going? What are we funding? Um, well, I just have good stories from my recent trip, so I'll stop there.
Oh, well, we can go there. But yeah, I so agree with you. And that's one of our missions at nOMad too, was to get people off the mat and out into the world and out of their day-to-day life, right? Because we
Yes.
can only function so much consciously when we're in the same routine every single day. But when we get to go to a whole new world, and yes, at
Yeah.
nOMad, we do our best to like set everything up so there are the perfect scenarios, but there's always something, right? In the travels and that's really where the practice comes into play. So I would love to hear some of the recent adventures that you got to
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
I totally agree. I feel like when we go to these other places, I'm able to say to people, like, who are you when
Yeah.
you're not being who you think you are, right?
Yeah. Not in your
Um,
comfort zone.
yeah. So I'll not tell any stories about my clients, but I feel like I can talk about my family.
Okay.
They're my family. Um, So I was traveling most recently in Africa, went to visit my son who lives in Zambia. He's been there for about 18 months. He's 25, so he's like into it. And he knows my personality, he knows my husband's personality, and my husband is all about efficiency. He doesn't like to wait. He's a runner, he gets things done. He's type A, and I'm like, oh, look at the colors. So we get up at 6 to go catch a bus, because travel. And eventually the bus does come very late and very overcrowded. So we have to let that bus go. We've already been waiting a really long time. And so my husband is like, this is ridiculous. Let's just hire a private driver and get there quickly.
Mm.
And so my son speaks the language. And so he said, well, I'll negotiate it, but you'll have to not be you because anything could happen. And what that meant was, who knows what it meant. I know how I interpret it.
Patient.
So he arranges the ride. We get in the car. We head up the road, and in less than 5 minutes, the driver says, "Oh, I need to stop and change a tire." And the next thing you know, it's 4 tires being changed. We've been on the side of the road with like 17 people carrying on around this car for more than an hour. Arguments ensue, all these things happen, great drama. Finally, we get back in the car. We get on the road, and he says, "Oh, we have to fuel up, so we have to stop again." Back, and while we're there, I'm like half joking. I bet we're gonna have to stop and pick up some friends before it's over. So we get back on the road. We have to stop for a drink. We have to stop, pick up his phone, etc. Stop for the bathroom, and then sure enough, he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna pick up my brother." And he can just sit in the back seat between the two of you. And of course, at that point, my husband was like, no, no more. But I tell the story because anything can happen, right? And so we plan so well and we want to give our guests great experiences. But you have to roll with it, just like life, right? Life gives you what it does, no matter how much you may plan. And so we can lean on these tools and these philosophies of, even if it's this too shall pass, like how can I be in this situation with
Yeah.
grace and just let this be the experience? So somehow I find that travel always brings, to a greater or lesser degree, some bit of discomfort. And that's the juice. That's the good stuff to like say, what is it that's triggering this discomfort in me, and how does it show up in my life in other ways?
Oh, yeah, I got chills when you said, what's the juice? That's the juice there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.
People, I mean, like I can say I was watching you on social media and like looking at the photos and how amazing it was. But there's always those moments, like you said, we don't usually document them, but we
Yeah.
know, yeah, like not everybody knows that. And they think, oh my gosh, Amanda, I want to go on this adventure with you next time. And like
Yeah.
there's a whole other layer that you don't see, but
Oh yeah.
that is that is the part where it really tests you and gets into all of the layers of your being, right? And sees how you show up in the world. So, wow, thank you for sharing that. And I was waiting for when are they going to pick up the friend? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe some, yeah.
that usually
Um,
happens whenever I travel and have a driver of some kind. It's like, oh, we're picking up other people along the way.
yeah. And it was so interesting because you know, my son, in translating to this gentleman who really didn't know why any of this would bother us, you
Yeah.
know, basically said, these are my parents, they're from the United States, and they've come here to learn about your culture. And, you know, can I tell you something about United States culture? Time is money. And
Yeah.
I was just like, you know, ouch.
Mm.
That's so much ouch because it just made me pause to think about how I want to spend my time. And it made me think a little bit like, you know, in yoga, we say the asana is working when it starts to be uncomfortable, right? When you
Yeah.
start to want to get out of it.
Tough.
And yeah, when these awarenesses come into our lives, that's the yoga.
Yeah. So, so where are you now? You were saying you're in Greece now and you're about to start another retreat. So what's that going to look
Mhm.
like?
So the retreat itself will be in Lefkada, which is an island not far away from Athens in the Ionian Sea. It is called Mythos. And because Lefkada was once believed to be Ithaca, the home of Odysseus, I am loosely theming this around the Odyssey, but I'm using female characters from the Odyssey to talk about feminine archetypes. My retreats aren't exclusively women all of the time, but this one is for women. And so we're looking at these ancient myths and how they are actually eternal archetypes that live within each of us, and how they might even relate in the physical body to, or in the energetic body to, our chakra system, how we live out these energies. And, you know, it's really about like, you know, to use some wisdom from Jung. Carl Jung taught us that if we're not aware of the shadow, then we live it out.
Hmm.
And so it's just a way of looking at these energies and saying, how do these ancient stories give me wisdom for the story that is my life, like that I am creating at every moment of every day? Yeah,
Yeah.
I love Greek mythology, so it's really fun for me to dive into them as a teaching tool.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, by the time that we're releasing this for the global retreat and beyond, will have already happened. But not to give everything away, but I would love for you to just explore one of those archetypes with us, if you don't mind, as an example for people to experience.
Sure. Well, I will do seven for the seven chakras.
Okay.
Um, one of them that I've decided to take a little liberty with is not technically from the Odyssey, but um, from Troy, we get the myth of Cassandra. So the island that we're going to, Lefkada, is an island dedicated, or that was dedicated to Apollo. Cassandra was a princess of Troy, and Apollo desired her.
Mhm.
So he said, oh, you know, if you'll be mine, I will give you the gift of prophecy. And so he did. And as soon as she had the gift, she could see what might come with Apollo and immediately said no.
Mm.
And because she rejected him, he cursed her to be able, he couldn't take the, you know, the gift away, but he could add to it. So he basically cursed her to say that you will have the gift of prophecy. You'll be able to see what's coming, but no one will believe you. And so she could see the fall of Troy, and these were her, her brothers and her friends, and she could see a bloody massacre happening. And so she's warning everyone, and the Trojan horse comes in, and she's warning them, and they think she's crazy. They lock her up, they put her in an asylum, they treat her horribly. Eventually, the horse comes in, everything happens that we know, and she flees to the temple. And as she is in the temple seeking sanctuary, she's raped by one of the warriors, and then eventually she is sent away and killed. And she sees all of this coming, right? And it's interesting to me whether we think about this as a root chakra kind of thing about our safety and how we survive, or whether we think about it as a throat chakra kind of thing, how we express ourselves. It's interesting to me that in the world right now, we have these energies around the feminine. We can think of the topic of abortion rights right now, and women's voices, whatever your perspective is, are women's voices being taken away? And what does that mean? Like, how do we speak up in a way that allows us to be heard? So there are all different ways that we can go with that. And I don't have the answers, but I do have some journal questions. And I invite everybody to spend some time with, what it means to them, and how these stories just repeat and repeat.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, yeah, I did know that story of Cassandra, but just hearing that was so powerful again. And like when you were speaking, I was feeling more like sacral chakra, like that deep feminine and that space of creation and our intuition in that space. But so I can see where all these possibilities, like you said, you're exploring all of the chakras and how that could ignite like different aspects of the chakra system as you explore the story. And I love that you're intertwining these stories into it, because a lot of times, you and I have been teaching yoga, quote unquote, retreats, and people think that's what we're going to do is just do some down dogs and up dogs. But there's so much more, not just of the ancient teachings, but there's so many other layers. And I love that you just spoke into like, oh, and there's going to be journaling. And so people know that when they're signing up for a retreat with Amanda, yes, there's going to be the practice of yoga, but there's going to be so much more. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Greek history is just, such a deep well to splash around in. Yeah. So the retreat that's coming up in May, which will be on Amorgos, Greece, that one I'm calling Earth and Sky. And so the earth represents the feminine, down and in, and sky represents masculine, up and out, so yin and yang. And the assertive and the receptive, and how are we humans a channel between earth and sky, and how do we create this balance between the yang, masculine, sky energy, solar energy, and the yin, the earth, receptive, grounded energy. So however we're embodied, I think it's something that's really relevant for everyone. So I'm changing the script a little bit for the next one. And the other thing that I do with these Greece retreats that's a little different than my others is I do a pre-treat. And the pre-treat is a week-long guided trek through the inland, through the mountains of Greece. And so it really allows us to get into having authentic connections with people who live in the villages, and people who, that maybe tourists don't get to experience all the time.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Oh yeah. I would love to see how your husband goes on that trip.
He's not going on that trip. He would be racing to the top of the mountain, though, I assure you, and I would be sitting at the bottom saying, "Look great." Not really. I love participating, because what happens is, you're just out there connected to the earth for 8 days, and you don't get Wi-Fi on trail. And, I can say, please use your airplane mode when we're on retreat, but maybe people do and maybe they don't.
Yeah.
There's just, something happens when we're all out there together. And then we're doing homestays. So we get to come back in the evening and
Uh,
shower and have a farm grown meal. And
yes.
yeah, good
That's
learning.
really special. Oh, I love that. Okay. And that's what we want people to know about, because there's an invitation in this global retreat to perhaps come along and join you on that next retreat. And you said May, right? In 2025.
Definitely. The formal retreat is May 9 through 16 at a Morgos only 5-star hotel and spa. So you can have some decadence. And then prior to that is 8 days of, this time we'll hike Naxos and some of the smaller Cycladic islands that maybe people don't get to see. So it'll be different. If, for folks who have come on the mountain trek before, it'll be different for them.
So it sounds like it's overall the two together. It's how long?
September 1 through 16.
Okay. Wonderful. That's
Yeah,
wonderful. So that's a long journey for people.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I do have to think of things that are a little bit more accessible from time to time. So we've done Nepal, we've done some good adventures, but the next one coming up is Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a direct flight that's only 4 hours. So I feel like that's nice and easy.
Yeah. And you have a space there too. So you can call that home in a sense.
In a sense, yes, I do have a home in Nosara. I dearly love Costa Rica. The
Yeah.
retreat is going to be in the Osa. And so, as you know, it's one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. So, again, I take a lot of wisdom from nature, but to be connected to these animals that we don't get to see every day, it's like, it's a little like getting to be in the Avatar movie for a week.
True.
And the
Oh my
thing,
God, I love Yosa. Yeah. So
yeah, it
special.
really is.
Yeah.
So we'll work with the elements for that.
Okay.
And I'm doing something different for that retreat that I've never done before. It's called Nature, Nurture, and Nidra. So every single day, there will be at least one yoga nidra practice,
Okay.
which, if anyone isn't familiar with nidra, the word means sleep.
Yes.
So it's a totally relaxed, guided meditation, which can literally change the brain waves, not to mention our nervous system. And so it just has incredible benefits. And um, I know I used to go to the studio, and weekly after class, I would do a yoga nidra. And just that weekly class was so wonderful. So, what if we did it every day? How would 7 days of that change up?
Yeah. And with all of the sounds that are there, it's like a whole
Mm-hmm.
symphony to hear your
Mm-hmm.
voice guiding them, but also just, yeah, oh, very special.
Yeah. And we are steps from the beach. So you will literally hear the rhythm of the surf the
Yeah.
whole time.
Oh, yes. And so, this interview is part of our global retreat that's happening here in September. What's your session going to be about? What is that going to look like?
I am interested in offering yoga nidra. So it doesn't look like much. It looks like lying on the
What's it
floor.
going to feel like? That's the better
Oh my
question. What's it going to
gosh.
feel like? What can
It
people
is,
expect?
yeah. Um, so if people would like to attend, I will tell you that it will be helpful to think about building a nest ahead of time. Have your mat, have some blankets, a bolster, pillows, eye mask, sandbag if you have it, whatever like really allows you to sink into feeling held and supported. And then I'll introduce, what we're doing, of course. But basically, I will guide guests into gentle breath work, starting to prioritize the parasympathetic nervous system. And then we'll take an inward journey into the physical body, just feeling various parts of the physical body. And then we'll go a little further into what we can sense, feel, or imagine as I guide an inward experience.
Mhm.
And we'll have some time for silence at the end. So it feels like the best shavasana you've ever had. And, no guarantees, but often some aha moments seem to pop up in these things.
Yeah.
Um, and the benefits are just so incredible, whether we're dealing with, just basic stress or anxiety or depression or sleeplessness or our blood pressure, getting that kind of deep reset is just so powerful. And I feel like I spend a lot of my life being very externally oriented.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think I was responsive, but probably I'm reactive a lot of the time. And so taking this time to journey inward is really, I think, one of the most invaluable things we can do. And everybody can do it. Even
Yeah.
if you can't lie on the floor, you can totally get comfortable in a chair, on a bed. Everybody can do it.
Mhm.
So I hope people will give it a try. And I will say one other thing, if people are coming, that's very helpful, are earbuds or high quality headphones that allow you to really to tune out the ambient noise and really feel like you're following my voice inward through your subconscious.
Yeah. So it felt like when you were speaking of it, full circle to your story of the pandemic and when you were
Mhm.
speaking of how you were so your soul was tired, as you were
Yeah,
saying, and I feel like the world is built so for us to be so external, like we always have to be outward facing. And what that call was for you and for everybody, really, that silver lining of the pandemic was that we were able to be more introverted and go inward and experience, oh, what do I need? How do I need to nourish myself now when we don't have to be so outward facing? And this practice, yeah, I think this practice is a great reminder for people if they want back out into that old way, right? Of having to be facing outward all the time in that external world. So I'm so
yeah,
excited for it. And we'll make sure that we'll put some notes there for people to know how to prepare. Like you said, can you just say it again? We'll make sure we have the list.
sure. I
Pillows,
like to call it a nest.
build your net.
So a yoga mat, at least two, maybe three blankets. If you have a bolster, if not, gather some pillows from your bed. If you have an eye mask, if you have a sandbag, if you have even things on an altar that you like to have around you that feel protective and supportive. But my favorite thing is to remember to wear some beats or some headphones that allow for the best quality sound, because the meditation is solely about staying tethered to a sound, specifically my voice, while you relax the body and the identity as completely as you can.
Mm, I love it. Thank you for that. I'm really excited to experience that. The most relaxed version of excitement that you can be.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And I
yeah,
think that we've scheduled it at the start of the day.
yeah.
So it's actually a nice way to ground and to really be present for everything that is to come.
Beautiful. And how can people stay? We're going to have links and everything in this page, but if you could just speak into how can people stay in touch with you, website, social media, anywhere else you like to hang out?
Sure. Um, I'm easy to find on Facebook because my last name is Trevelino, and there's not a lot. I haven't found another Amanda Trevelino, Trevelino. My Instagram handle is Demanda Good Life, DAMANDA Demanda Good Life. And my website is santosha-studio.com. The word Santosha, for anyone who might not know, is a Sanskrit word that basically means contentment, not from the things that come from without, but being able to be content with whatever our circumstances are, because we have that inwardness that is solid. So those are three ways. And then the other way that's very direct is to just email me, um, a Trevelino, Trevelino, at gmail.com. And I'll be glad to respond to your questions and point you in any direction that I can.
I love it. Oh, Amanda, this is such a joy. I get to know a little bit more about you. So I'm selfishly excited that we got to have this moment in time and space and the busy travel schedule that you have. And I'm really happy that we get to share you with our nOMad community. Is there anything else that you want to share that we didn't explore here today as we wrap up?
No, thank you for your time. I really appreciate that we synchronized our time zones and that you made this happen. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. So thank you, and have such a beautiful retreat with you and your group. What an exciting time for you. Thank you, Amanda. And we'll see you on the other side.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Bye.